stole the queen from her bed and bound her in her boat. The seas be ours, and by the powers where we will we roam. All hands hoist the colors high. Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. What's up, people? Pretty late on a Sunday night, so we'll see if anybody actually pops on for the live. But as many people have been listening to me know, I've just been wanting to do these pirate shows, so I'm just kind of jumping on when I can. I'm wide awake tonight, so I figured we would continue on with our reading of The Pirates of Panama by Alexander Esquemeling. We left off last time towards the end of the tales of the pirate L'Olonois. So, for anybody that hasn't listened before, didn't catch the first episode, I'll give a quick intro on the book that we're reading from and who wrote it and why it's important and all that. And then we're going to jump back into the very tail end of the story of the pirate L'Olonois. And that's in this section is where he dies too, and it is gnarly. After this pirate, though, we're going to be hopping in the sequence of the book, going directly into the service of our author under Captain Morgan, which is obviously a pirate that everybody knows, everybody's heard of. But we're going to do an intro shortly into this, like I said, for anybody that didn't hear the first episode of this. But this is when we get into Captain Morgan, it's really cool because this is the only authentic and validated story of anyone, a first-hand account from one of the people that actually sailed under Captain Morgan. It's the only authentic and validated first-hand account we have of a pirate that sailed under Captain Morgan, so it's really cool. But the quick intro for anybody that didn't hear before, we're reading from The Pirates of Panama by Alexander Esquemeling. He was a Hollander. In the first episode, if you did not hear it, go back and listen to it. But in the first episode, we left out of France with our author in 1666 towards Tortuga under service of the French East India Company. After the, I don't know what you want to call the failure of that company, our author was sold to a local master who was incredibly unkind to him. He almost died. While he was very sick and dying, his very, very unkind master decided, instead of just letting him die and losing all of his money, that he would sell him to a local surgeon at a loss. And that local surgeon took in Alexander Esquemeling in the year 1666, probably going into 1667. He took him in, he nursed him back to health, and then he taught him a trade. He taught him the trade of barber surgeon, having him apprentice under him for the next following year, so into 1668. He then discharged him and gave him his freedom, which is unheard of in that time. But the surgeon gave him his freedom under one promise, that when he came into some money, or when he had saved enough, that he would come back and pay him 100 pieces of 8 to pay him back for buying him in the first place, right? Right. So then our author, Alexander Esquemeling, goes down to the docks. He has nothing. right? He's just been made a free man. He has no money whatsoever. He has no shoes on his feet. He has just the clothes that he's wearing. No opportunity, no job, but he has been given this apprenticeship. So he goes down to the port and looks into trying to join the pirates, and they allow it, right? They bring him in, and he becomes an official member of what was called the Brethren of the Coast. Again, this is 1668 in Tortuga. So in the first episode and in the first part of the book, we have a description of his sailing, like I said, how he got to Tortuga, what happened to him, how he got into the service of the pirates. It also gives a description of Tortuga itself and tells us about all of the very, very earliest histories of how the original Buccaneers came to be. Where they came from, how they got their name, all of that stuff. So if you haven't heard the first episode, go back and check that out. But then Alexander gives us a first-hand account of the sailings of this pirate, Lolonois, a French pirate who was extremely, extremely, extremely cruel. He was very, very, very murderous and barbarous, and absolutely hated the Spanish and would just torture them. It wasn't even that, he would just murder these people in mass, which he did on land and at sea. But he would torture these people. He hated the Spanish. So the Spanish now, when he comes into these towns or he goes up against these ships, he has a problem. He's so feared, right? He's so feared that the Spanish would rather fight until the very, very last breath rather than surrender, right? So in a lot of you're a pirate because you know what they're going to do if you don't give them your money, right? In this case, he was so well known for the torturing of these people once he got them in his hands. That it wasn't even all about him just stealing their money, right? These people, instead of looking down the barrel of being tortured, right, mercilessly, just said, fuck that, surrender is not an option, right? So now he has these giant battles on his hands where before a lot of times he was able to get them to surrender and then he would just murder them in mass. Now these people are fighting to the very, very last breath. Now, when we left him, by a strategy, he had gotten himself out of a local prison. He had written a letter to the governor that was supposed to be written by other pirates that were still out at sea. He tells the governor that if the pirates he has in his hold right now, meaning him and his friends, he tells him in this letter that if you don't let them go, that we're not going to give quarter to anyone in your town when we come to avenge him. And that's how they get out. Immediately, he begins his journey back to Tortuga. He picks up a lot of the spoils he had put off in other places, brings them all to Tortuga and sells them. And in this very last chapter that we have on him, which again, like I said, ends with his dying. In this chapter, it begins with him putting together his next plans of piracy, what he wants to do next, right? So he just got out of prison. He collects all of his shit, gets a bunch of guys together, goes back to Tortuga, sells everything. He's pretty successful still. And he starts putting together plans for his very next raids. Okay, so let me grab a sip of my drink. Anybody that's out here smoking, smoke it up. Get baked. If you're having a drink, have your drink. If you're listening to this later and you're at work or riding in a car or whatever, I hope you're having a great day. And I will smoke my bowl for you now. And then we will get started with Chapter 8 of the Pirates of Panama. The only authentic and validated history of one of these guys that with these specific pirates. There was there are four books that are authentic and fairly well validated, but this is the only long form, personal, firsthand account of someone that was with these people as the barber surgeon on their ships and on their raids. So here's this chapter 8. It's titled L'Olonois makes new preparations to make the city of St. James de Leon, as also that of Nicaragua, where he miserably perishes. Dude, he does go out in a bad way. And we're going to get through this chapter. You'll see what I mean. First, let me say hi to the people that come in. Let's see. Let me start up here at the top. What's up, William? Good to see you. Gigi, hope you're well. Bella, good to see you too. Edwin, hope you're having a good night. Bears and Cigars, what's up, man? Billy, yeah, okay, dude. Let's see. Mob Rat Hunter, what's up, man? Hope you're having a good night. Arkansas, how you doing? All right, cool. It's pretty late on a Sunday night. I'm surprised anybody's here. But this is, like I said before, I've been trying to get to doing these pirate shows, so I'm just doing them whenever I can, regardless of who's up or how late it's going to be. You know what I mean? I just want to get them recorded and on the channel and all that, because I've been meaning to do this. Bears and Cigars says, I'm going to be going to sleep. RTC, read me a bedtime story. Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm going to read you a story, man. Rat Trap's going to read everybody a story. Yeah, absolutely, man. So here we go with Chapter 8, Pirates of Panama. L'Olonois had got great repute at Tortuga by this last voyage because he brought home such considerable profit, and now he needed take no great care to gather men to serve under him. More and more were coming in voluntarily than he could employ, everyone reposing such confidence in his conduct that they judged it very safe to expose themselves in his company to piracy and to the greatest dangers of all. He resolved, therefore, a second voyage to the parts of Nicaragua to pillage there as many towns as he could. Having published his new preparations locally and put up the word to everybody for as far as he could that he was going to go out and do more pirating, he had all of the men gathered together at a specific time. And when they did, it was about 700 pirates. 700 fucking pirates came when he put the word out that he was going pirating. It's wild, man. Of these, he put 300 aboard the ship that he took at Maracaibo, and the rest in 5 other vessels of lesser burthen, so that they were in all 6 ships. 6 ships, 700 pirates coming. That's wild. The first port they went to was in Haiti to get all the food they needed for the fleet and to take in all the provisions that they could, which done, they steered their course to a port called Matamana on the south side of Cuba, intending to take here all the canoes that they could. These coasts were often frequented by the fishers for tortoises who carried them hence to Havana. They took as many of them, to the great grief of those miserable people, as they thought necessary, for they had great use for these small bottoms, by reason the port they designed to take had not depth enough for ships of any burthen. Hence they took their course towards the Cape Gracias a Dios on the continent in latitude 15 degrees north, 100 leagues from the island de los Pinos. Being at sea, they were taken with a sad and tedious calm, and by the agitation of the waves alone were thrown into the Gulf of Honduras. That sucks. So if you get a calm in the sea, if anybody doesn't know what that means, back in the day when they were sailing, think about it. If it went calm, that meant there was no wind, right? So you were basically stuck wherever the fuck you were at. You were totally just stuck. You could be literally in the middle of the ocean, right? You could be somewhere you really don't want to be. You could be chased. You could be chasing, right? Anything could be going on. But when you hit a calm, that meant that there was no wind and you weren't going fucking anywhere unless you had like oar power, right? So it's saying that as soon as these guys got out to sea, they were taken by a calm and by the agitation of the waves, right? So there was still a current. They were thrown into the Gulf of Honduras, and that's not where they were trying to go. Here they labored hard in vain to regain the distance that they had lost. both by the water and what small wind they did get, but the wind was to the contrary of where they wanted to go. So the wind's blowing in the wrong direction now, and they can't really make any stride. Besides, the ship wherein Lolonois was embarked could not follow the rest, and what was worse, they were the ones that needed food. Hereupon, they were forced to put into the first port that they could reach to get more food, because the food was divvied up between the other boats, and they basically were left behind. So they entered with their canoes into the river Zagua, inhabited by Indians, very, very fully and thickly. These they totally destroyed, finding great quantities of millet and many hogs and hens. Not contented with which, they determined to remain there until the bad weather was over, and to pillage all of the towns and villages along the coast of the Gulf. Thus they passed from one place to another, seeking still more food and more water and more wine, with which they were not sufficiently supplied. Having searched and rifled many villages where they found no great matter, they came at last to Puerto Cavallo, where the Spaniards have 2 storehouses to keep the merchandises that are brought from the inner parts of the country until the arrival of the ships. There was then in the port a Spanish ship of 24 guns and 16 pedreros on a mortar piece. Okay, so it's mortar pieces, it's explained. I just didn't know how to say the Spanish word. It says, then there was in the port a Spanish ship of 24 guns and 16 mortar pieces. This ship was immediately seized by the pirates, and then drawing nigh the shore, they land storehouses with all the rest of the houses there. Many inhabitants likewise they took prisoners, and committed upon them the most inhuman cruelties that ever heathens invented, putting them to the cruelest tortures they could devise. It was the custom of Lolonois that, having tormented people not confessing, he would instantly cut them in pieces with his hanger and pull out their tongues. Man, I told you this guy was a fucking psycho. I told you this guy was a psycho. He murdered people in mass, and now, since he got separated from the other boats right during that calm, and they couldn't catch back up with them, they needed food and drink. So they just went onto the shore, and wherever they were at, they were robbing. So like they just literally landed, said fuck it, and they started going up and down the coast, robbing and killing and setting everything on fire, dude. And it said that there was 700 pirates, and that 300 of them were on this ship. So you got 300 pirates land on the shore and just going village to village, town to town, burning everything to the fucking ground and stealing everything and torturing these people. That shit is horrific, man. Horrific. All right. And it says he was pulling out their tongues and shit. And like, if anybody wouldn't confess where they put their stuff, he would just cut them to pieces before pulling their tongues out. That's fucked up. It says, it often happened that being of these miserable prisoners being forced by the rack would promise to discover the places where the fugitive Spaniards lay hid, which not being able afterwards to perform, they were then put to more cruel deaths than they, oh, wow, man. So they would basically, he's saying they would torture some of these people, and just to get it to stop, they would lie and say they knew where some of these people were, and then they would take them out, whatever, in the jungle to the place they said people were, and if they weren't there, then they would fucking torture them even worse. That's terrible. The prisoners being all dead but 2, whom they reserved to show them what they desired, they marched hence to the town of San Pedro or St. Peter, 10 or 12 leagues from Puerto Cavallo, being 300 men. Lolonois was leading. They left behind him Moses Van... What is this? They left behind their lieutenant. His name was Moses Van Vin, to govern the rest in his absence. So I guess whatever was left, it said they killed all the prisoners. So I guess some of the people were still alive. They left this lieutenant behind to watch everything. Okay. Being come there 3 leagues on their way, they met with a troop of Spaniards who lay in ambush for their coming. These they set upon with all the courage imaginable, and at last totally defeated them. Howbeit they behaved themselves very manfully at first, but not being able to resist the fury of the pirates, they were forced to give way and save themselves by flight. Okay, so they ran away. They were getting fucked up and they ran away. Excuse me. All right. So that's wild, man. So they went heading for the next town. The Spanish heard they were coming. They laid an ambush. They fought, but the pirates were fucking them up bad, so they had to turn around and run. Okay, that's where we're at. Here we go. Okay. They did, however, kill a lot of pirates, it says, and there was a lot of wounded as well. These Lolonois put to death without mercy, having asked him what questions. Okay, so they were all mixed together. They went walking through the battle, or the battlefield, as it were, and any of the Spaniards that weren't dead, they killed. There were still remaining some few prisoners not wounded. These were asked by Lolonois if any more Spaniards did lie further in ambush. They answered that there obviously were. Then being brought before him one by one, he asked if there was no other way to that town except for the road that they were on. This he did to avoid, if possible, any ambushes, but they all constantly answered him that they knew no other roads than the one that they were on to get to the town. Having asked them all and finding they could show him no other way, Lolonois grew outrageously passionate, so that he drew his cutlass and with it cut open the breast of one of those poor Spaniards. And pulling out his heart, he began to bite it and gnaw at it with his teeth like a ravenous wolf, saying to the rest, "I will serve you all alike if you show me not another way." That shit's sick, man. Hereupon those miserable wretches promised to show him another way, but withal they told him it was extremely difficult and laborious. Thus, to satisfy that cruel tyrant, they began to lead him and his army, but finding it not for his purpose as they had told him, he was forced to return to the former way, swearing with great indignation, "By God's death, the Spaniards shall pay me for this." Next day, he fell into another ambush, which he assaulted with such horrible fury that in less than an hour's time, he routed the Spaniards again and killed the greatest part of them. The Spaniards thought by these ambushes better to destroy the pirates, assaulting them by degrees, and for this reason had posted themselves in several places instead of one. At last he met with a third ambush where he was placed at a much stronger party and more advantageous. Yeah, okay, so they had the fucking advantage on him big time in this skirmish. Notwithstanding, the pirates, by continually throwing little fireballs in great numbers, there you go, they forced this party as well as the former to flee, and this with so great loss of men that before they could reach the town, the greatest part of the Spaniards were either already killed or wounded. What does it say? Oh, is KD in here? What's up, KD? Good to see you. Foolish Vlog says, "I feel like it's bedtime stories." It is, man. Yeah. Unless you're really into pirate stuff, then you find this interesting and you're listening, but it is late. All right, so he fell into a third ambush. There was a lot more of them this time. It was kind of like their last big push to try and stop Lolonois and his 300 pirates. Or he did lose a few, so let's call it 250. This time there was a lot more of them, and they had the advantage on him in ground. But then the pirates started throwing fireballs and fucking grenades and shit, it sounds like, and they fucked a lot of them up, and they made way through them. And I guess in those three ambushes was most of the Spaniards that belonged to this town, because it says when they got to the town, everybody was basically or they were wounded and fucked up and they weren't going to fight. Next, all right, so let's go through here. Let's see. All right, where's it at? Third ambush, that's the one we just read. Fireballs. Okay, there was but one path which led to the town, very well barricaded still with good defenses, and the rest of the town round was planted with shrubs. They were full of thorns, very sharp pointed. This sort of fortification seemed used in Europe, when an army is of necessity to pass by the place of an enemy, it being almost impossible for the pirates to traverse those shrubs because of the thorns. The Spaniards posted behind the said defenses, seeing the pirates come, began to ply them with their great guns. But these, perceiving them ready to fire, used to stoop down, and when the shot was made, to fall upon the defendants with fireballs and naked swords, killing many of the town. Yet notwithstanding not being able to advance any farther, they retired for the present. Then they renewed the attack with fewer men than before, and observing not to shoot till they were very nigh, they gave the Spaniards a charge so dexterously that the man every shot they killed an enemy. Okay, so when they finally were going down the path that led to the town, right, it said that most of the Spaniards were already dead, but there were obviously some left in the big guns. So I guess we're just thinking like cannons and shit like that. I mean, that's what I'm imagining when they say in great guns, right? If they're shooting the great guns and they've got them up on barricades. And it says that they were all behind all of these huge bushes that had big, long, pointy thorns on them, and the pirates couldn't really get through them until they got rid of the guys with the guns. So every time they would shoot the cannon, the pirates would drop to the ground, and then they'd aim their rifles and they would snipe these motherfuckers out. Because remember, the older pirates are the old school buccaneers, and remember, we learned that the buccaneers were the original hunters in the Caribbean. So they were all really, 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 really good shots with a rifle. And it said that almost every shot killed somebody, like they weren't missing. The attack continuing thus eager on both sides until nightfall, the Spaniards were compelled to hang forth a white flag and desired to come to a parley. The only conditions they required were that the pirates should give the inhabitants quarter for 2 hours. This little time they demanded with intent to carry away and hide as much of their goods and riches as they could, and to fly to some other neighboring town. Granting this article, they entered the town and continued there 2 hours without committing the least hostility on a single inhabitant. But no sooner was the time passed than Lolonois ordered that the inhabitants should be followed and robbed of all they had carried away, and not only their goods, but their persons likewise to be made prisoners. Though the greatest part of the merchandise and goods were so hid as the pirates could not find them, except a few leathern sacks filled with indigo and shit like that, whatever. I don't know what this word is. But so the people in the towns in the Spanish said, listen, man, we put up a white flag. We'll surrender the fucking town, but you've got to give us 2 hours to get our shit together and like give us a head start. And the pirates said, cool, no problem. They entered the town and they kept their word. They didn't touch anything. They didn't touch a person. They didn't assault anybody. They didn't steal anything. They didn't fuck with nothing. They gave these people their 2 hours to grab their shit and have a head start. At the end of that 2 hours, they went and caught up with them. And by the time they caught up with them, they had already hid a bunch of their shit in like the surrounding jungle. And they only found them with like a few leather sacks filled with dye. It sounds like, I know they used indigo as dye back then. So they just found them with some bullshit. And all their treasures and goods were hidden in the jungle. Having stayed here a few days and according to their custom, committed most horrid insolences, they at last quitted the place, carrying away all they possibly could and reducing the town to ashes. Being come to the seaside where they left a party of their own, they found these men had been cruising upon the fishermen, or who that came that way from the river of Guatemala. In this river was also expected a ship from Spain. Finally, they resolved to go toward the islands on the other side of the Gulf, there to cleanse and careen their vessels. But they left 2 canoes before the coast, or rather the mouth of the river of Guatemala, in order to take the ship, which, as I said, was expected from Spain. So they were like, cool. They heard there was a big ship coming. They were like, we're definitely going to rob that motherfucker. So instead of leaving, they just went to the other side of the bay to clean their ships and left some canoes and some guys hanging out so that they could get word when it popped up. These guys are insane, man. 300 pirates came off of one boat, stormed this entire coast, village by village by village, town by town by town, and then finally made it up to the big town through 3 different ambushes on the road. They had to fight the dudes with the cannons, right? They were throwing fireballs and grenades and just fucking sniping people. Finally caught up. Took them 4 days. They finally found most of the stuff. They gathered it up. They head back to the coast. They get in their boats and they're like, oh, word, there's a huge Spanish ship coming. Well, we're definitely going to steal that. So We're going to go hide on the other side, clean our bottoms, get nice and fast, and we'll be back. All right. While they were gone, another of their chief intents was to seek provisions, knowing that the turtles of those places were excellent food. Being arrived, they divided themselves, each party choosing a fit post for that fishery. They undertook to knit nets with the rinds of certain trees called macoa, whereof they also make ropes and cables. So no vessel can be in need of such things if they can but find these trees. Well, that's pretty cool. There are also many places where they find pitch in so great abundance that running down the sea coast, being melted by the sun, it congeals in the water in great heaps like small islands. This pitch is not like that of Europe, but resembles both in color and shape that froth of the sea called bitumen. But in my judgment, this matter is nothing but wax mixed with sand, which stormy weather and the rolling waves of great rivers cast into the sea. All right, let's get past this. The pirates made in those islands all the haste they possibly could to equip their vessels, hearing that the Spanish ship was come, which they expected. They spent some time cruising on the coasts of many of the Yucatan, where inhabit many Indians who seek for the said amber in those seas. And I shall here, by the way, make some short remarks on the manner of living of the Indians. I think we'll go ahead and skip that. Hang on. Let's skip that. All right. So the pirates went in and stole a bunch of the canoes from the Indians. Let's see. Okay. The pirates, having been in that gulf now 3 months and receiving advice that the Spanish ship was come, hastened to the port where the ship lay at anchor, unlading her merchandise, with design to assault her as soon as possible. But first they thought convenient to send away some of their boats to seek for a small vessel, also expected very richly laden with plate, indigo, and cochineal. Meanwhile, the ship's crew, having noticed that the pirates designed upon them, prepared all things for a good defense, being mounted with 42 guns, well furnished with arms and other necessaries, and 130 fighting men. All right. So they finally got across. They'd been in this area now for 3 months, robbing and stealing and killing. They finally get over there. They see that the Spanish ship has come, but they hear that there's another smaller boat just up the coast that's supposed to be coming in, that's supposed to have a bunch of gold and silver and stuff like that on it. So they're like, okay, cool. They send a smaller crew to leave and go after that boat. And now the rest of the guys with Lolonois are staying behind to go after the main boat that they heard, or the first boat they heard about. But the first boat now sees the pirates, figures out that's what's going on, and they start loading up their guns, which is 42 guns, and they've got 130 fighting men on their ship. To Lolonois, all this seemed but little, for he assaulted her with great courage. So he was like, fuck it, I don't care. I got you guys. I'm coming. And that's what he did. So he assaulted the ship with great courage, his own ship carrying but 22 guns and having no more than a small safety or flyboat for help. But the Spaniards defended themselves so well as they forced the pirates to retire, powder continuing thick as a dark fog or mist. With 4 canoes well manned, they boarded the ship with great agility and forced the Spaniards to surrender. That is some pirate shit right there. They're both on their big boats. They're both shooting at each other, right? There's a huge, huge cloud of, they are saying, looks just like a dark fog or a mist that came from the powder, from all the cannons and the guns being shot, right? The pirates are losing, but because they've created this giant cloud of fog from the powder, the pirates slowly come down the sides of their ship into canoes and come around the other side, scale up the Spanish boat, get on deck, and just fucking cut everybody to pieces until they surrender. It's awesome. The ship now being taken, they found not in her what they thought, being already almost unladen. All they got was only 50 bars of iron, a small earthen jars of wine, and other things of small importance. Then Lolonois called a council of war and told them he intended for Guatemala. Hereupon they divided into several sentiments, some liking the proposal and others disliking it. So, as we know, as they described to us in the very first part of this book, everything comes to a vote, right? Regardless of what's going on. That's part of being a member of the Brethren of the Coast. No matter if you're one of the young boys, there was like 12 or 13 whose only job was to set fire to other ships when they were done with them, all the way up to the captain, everybody got a vote and it counted. So they're saying now that they took this boat, Lolonois wants to go on and take Guatemala, right? So he holds a council of war amongst the Brethren of the Coast that are there. And that's about 250 left, right? He started off with 300 there with him. Well, first they had 700, then they got separated. So he had 300 through all this fighting for 3 months up and down the coast and taking all these towns and shit like that and fighting with the Indians. He's now got like 250 guys. So he calls a council of war and he tells them that he intends to go after Guatemala. The crowd splits, right? Some of the people are for it. Some of the people don't like the idea, especially a party of them who were but raw in those exercises and who imagined that they're setting forth from Tortuga, that pieces of 8 were gathered as easy as pears from a tree. But finding most things contrary to their expectation, they quitted the fleet and returned. So, okay, so of some of the people that didn't like the idea were people that were agreeing. This was like their first outing. They thought that this shit was going to be super easy. They thought they could, because there were so many of their guys, they were just going to go out together and like be able to find, you know, money falling from the trees. And, you know, they thought everything was going to be easy. And they're like, this is hard. Fuck this. We don't want to do this anymore. And they go back. And I'm sure the pirates were like, good, fuck off. The rest of the pirates, however, said that they would rather starve than return home without a great deal of money. So they're like, yo, let's go after wherever you want to go after. Let's get it done and get this robbing. Let's go pirating, man. Right? But the major part, judging the propounded voyage little to their purpose, they separated from Lolonois and the rest. Of these was that original Moses Van Klein guy that they left behind as the governor when they went after that big town just a little while ago in the chapter. He took a bunch of guys and left. It says he went back to Tortuga to cruise to and fro in those seas. With him joined another comrade of his named Pierre Le Picard, who, seeing the rest leave Lolonois, thought fit to do the same. These runaways, having thus parted company, steered homewards, coasting along the continent until they came to Costa Rica. Here they landed a strong party close to the river Veraguas and marched in good order to the town of the same name. This they took and totally pillaged. Though the Spaniards made a strong resistance. They brought away some of the inhabitants with all they had, which was of no great importance, by reason of the poverty of the place, which exercises no other trade than working in the mines locally, where some of the inhabitants constantly attend, while none seek for gold, but only the slaves. These they compel to dig and wash the earth in the neighboring rivers. All right, so let's get past this. All right, Lolonois, thus left by his companions, remained alone in the Gulf of Honduras, his ship being too great to get out of the reflux of those seas. There he sustained great want of food and drink, so as they were constrained to go ashore every day to seek sustenance, and not finding anything else, they were forced to kill and eat monkeys and other animals such as they could find. At last, in the altitude of the Cape of Gracias a Dios, near a certain little island called De las Pertas, his ship struck on a bank of sand, where it stuck so fast as no art could get her off again. Though they unladed all the guns, all the iron, and other weighty things as much as they could. Hereupon they were forced to break the ship in pieces, and with planks and nails build themselves another boat to get away. And while they are busy about it, I shall describe the said isles and their inhabitants. All right, so let's go ahead and skip past that also. All right, hang on, let's see. Hang on, where's it go? All right, let me get a drink. Oh, I see some other people came. Let me go. I haven't been looking at the chat at all. I've just been reading, so let me scroll up here real quick. What's up, Jason? Always good to see you, man. KD, I think I saw you before. But what's up? What's up, MRE? Hope you're having a good night. Foolish Flock, I said hi to you already, but what's going on? I just want to make sure because I haven't been looking at all this stuff. Mike, how you doing tonight too? I'm just scrolling through here. Montauk, what's up, man? All right, yeah, I'm gonna hit my bowl real quick, and we're gonna keep on through here. So, unfortunately, part of this section, and I'm skipping over here real quick because I don't want to read the whole entire. It's very, very long-winded and long. I mean, just long in general. He's describing the entire area and the Indians that are there. And we're just going to talk a little bit about, we're going to skip over the part where he's just talking about the land layout and all that. And we're just going to talk about the Indians because Lolonois fucked up. I mean, it wasn't his fault. I guess they got stuck in the sand and they had to break the ship down into pieces, right? They really, really need food. And in the place where that happened and they went on shore, man, it couldn't have been worse for him. It couldn't have been worse for him, right? So these Indians that are there are basically fucking cannibals. It says they have no bows nor arrows as the other Indians have, but their common weapon is a sort of lance, a fathom and a half long. Here are many plantations surrounded with woods, whence they gather abundance of fruits as potatoes, bananas, rakoven, bananas, and many other things. They have no houses to dwell in as at other places in the Indies. Some say that they eat human flesh, which is confirmed by what happened to Lolonois. Dude, I told you this guy dies in a really, really bad way. Two of Lolonois' companions, one a Frenchman and the other a Spaniard, went into the woods, where having straggled a while, a troop of Indians pursued them. They defended themselves as well as they could with their swords, but at last they were forced to flee. The nimble Frenchman escaped, but the Spaniard, being not so swift, was taken and heard of no more. Some days after, 12 pirates set forth well armed to seek their companion, among whom was the Frenchman, who conducted them, and showed them the place where he had left their friend. Here they found that the Indians had kindled a fire, and at a small distance they found a man's bones well roasted, with some pieces of flesh still scraping off of the bones, and they found one hand which only had 2 fingers remaining, whence they concluded that they had roasted and eaten the poor Spaniard. They marched on, seeking for Indians, and found a great number of them together, who endeavored to escape, but they overtook some of them and brought them aboard their ships, 5 men and 4 women. With these, they took much pains to make themselves to be understood and to gain their affections, giving them trifles such as knives, beads, and the like. They gave them also food and drink, but nothing would they taste. It was also observable that while they were prisoners, they spoke not one word to each other, so that seeing these poor Indians were much afraid, they presented them again with some small things and let them go. When they parted, they made signs that they would come again, but they soon forgot their benefactors and were never heard of anymore. Neither could any notice afterwards any single Indian anywhere, which made the pirates suspect that both those that were taken and all the rest of the islanders swam away by night to some little neighboring islands, especially considering they could never set eyes on a single Indian there anymore, nor any other boat or any other vessel. So they didn't see these guys. They let those people go, and they didn't see another Indian for days. They were looking around. They couldn't find one. They figured they just swam to another island because they didn't see any canoes or boats, right? They just figured, well, maybe they swam. But either way, they can't see any Indians around. All right. Let's go down here. Okay. All right, so the pirates now cast lots. They've got to figure out how to get the hell out of here, right? There's a river system that goes one way, or they can go out into the ocean, cruise down the coast, and try and find some place, right? they take lots to see who's going to go down the river and who's going to go the other way. The lot fell on one half of those people of the lost vessel who embarked in the longboat and on the skiff which they had before. The other half remained ashore to go and walk down the river. Lolonois, having set sail, arrived in a few days at the river Nicaragua. Here that ill fortune assailed him, which of long time had been reserved for him and his evil type, as a punishment due to the multitude of horrible crimes committed in his life. Here he met with both Spaniards and Indians, who jointly setting upon him and his companions, the greatest part of the pirates were killed on the spot. Lolonois, with those that remained alive, had much ado to escape aboard their boats. Yet notwithstanding this great loss, he resolved not to return to those he had excuse me, I'm fucking got cotton mouth. Let me grab my drink. Let's try that again. All right. Lolonois, with those that remained alive, had much ado to escape aboard their own boats. So they tried like hell to get on their boats. Yet notwithstanding the great loss that they had had, he resolved not to return to those he had left at the Isle of Pertas, without taking some boats at least. To this effect, he determined to go on to the coasts of Cartagena, but God, it says, but God Almighty, the time of his divine justice being now come, had appointed the Indians of Darien to be the instruments and executioners of Lolonois. These Indians of Darien are esteemed as bravos or wild savage Indians by the neighboring Spaniards, who never could civilize them. Hither Lolonois came, brought by his evil conscience that cried for punishment, thinking to act his cruelties. But the Indians, within a few days after his arrival, took him prisoner and tore him in pieces alive, throwing his body limb by limb into the fire and his ashes into the air, so that no trace or memory might remain of such an infamous, inhuman creature. One of his companions gave me an exact account of this tragedy, affirming that himself had escaped the same punishment with the greatest difficulty. He believed also that many of his comrades who were taken in that encounter by those Indians were, as their cruel captain, also torn into pieces while they were alive and burnt. Thus ends the history and the life and the miserable death of that infernal wretch Lolonois, who, full of horrid, execrable, and enormous deeds, and debtor to so much innocent blood, died by cruelty and butcherly hands, such as his own were in the course of his own wicked life. That shit is crazy, right? That shit's nuts, man. That dude went out in a really, really, really fucking bad way. A couple of them got away. One of them's telling his boy the whole story. And that's our guy that wrote this book, Alexander Esquemeling. Remember, the only first-hand account we have that's validated for history. That's wild, man. He got torn into pieces by the Indians alive. They're just throwing him into the fire, hand by hand, arm by arm, leg by leg. Wow. Those that remained in the island, waiting for the return of them who got away, only to their great misfortune, hearing no news of their captain nor companions, at last embarked on the ship of a certain pirate who happened to pass that way. This fellow had come from Jamaica with intent to land at Gracias a Dios, and from thence to enter the river with his canoes and take the city of Cartagena. These two crews of pirates being now joined were infinitely glad at the presence and society of one another. Those because they found themselves delivered from their miseries, poverty, and necessity, wherein they had lived 10 entire months in that area now. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that worked out for them, right? The people that survived and the other people that had gone the other way, they all kind of found each other. They're on the coast, and a ship full of pirates comes by from Jamaica. They were going out there to go a pirating, right? And they're like, dude, what's up? We're all part of the same gang. Give us a ride. So now they're all joined together and they're going robbing and stealing again. But it just says how thankful they are because they've been stuck in this area for 10 months, man, from the time that they first got there with Lolonois, right? After being separated, rather, from the rest of their crew, remember they set out with 700 pirates and 6 ships. 300 of them were on the greatest boat. That one got separated from all of them. They've been in this area for 10 months, man. That shit's nuts. And they're starving and they need drink. So they're very thankful. I'm sure, feeling pretty grateful that they were not completely torn into pieces by the Indians and put into the fire. It's pretty wild, man. Pretty wild. All right, cool. So that's the end of Lolonois. Yep. And we're on to chapter 9, which is what kicks us off into the story of a pirate that everybody knows and that our guy, Alexander Esquemeling, worked for, and that's Captain Henry Morgan. Our guy that wrote this firsthand account of his life as a member of the Brethren of the Coast worked as the barber surgeon for Captain Morgan, knew him very, very, very well for a very long time. And he gives us a firsthand account of all of his exploits. He tells us who this guy is, where he came from, what he's like, how he fights, how he plans, tells us everything. So it's pretty amazing. We're going to get into that here in just a moment. I'm going to grab a smoke. And then we're going to start our next chapter and kick off into the life of and the exploits of Captain Henry Morgan. All right, so give me a minute. I'm going mobile for a minute. I'm going to grab a smoke. And we'll get into that. Oh, sure, Mike. Everybody's heard of Captain Morgan. That's one of the most famous pirates of all. There's even a rum named after him, and there's parades and stuff. Like when people do pirate parades, cheesy pirate parades and stuff in towns, they always have like Blackbeard and Captain Morgan. Those are a couple of the most well-known for sure. And like I always keep reminding people as I do this episode or these episodes, I say it several times throughout each. The coolest part about this book and these stories that I'm reading you is that they're validated as authentic. You know, this is an account of somebody that was there and knew these people. If you haven't heard the first episode, you got to go back and listen to it and find out, you know, the general story of this guy. I explained it in the introduction at the beginning of this episode too. But yeah, I'm going to grab a smoke and then we'll get into that. But what an insane chapter that was, the ending of Lolonois' life. That was some pirate fucking insanity. You know, it was like stereotypical. And the best part is it's all real. That's exactly how it went down. You know, they set off from Tortuga with 700 pirates, man. He sent out word. Let's start there. Right? He had, in the last chapter, when we left off, last episode, he had just got him and himself, all his friends out of prison. He got all of his shit back together, headed for Tortuga. In the top of this chapter that we just read, he puts out word and pirates just come from every All right, I think we should be good. Hopefully you can hear me. I fucking went upstairs to grab a smoke. My Wi-Fi just dropped, so I don't know what to do about that. Hopefully it's all fixed now. Let me go over here to the chat. No, nobody kidnapped me, man. I just went to go grab a smoke real quick. That was fucked up. There we go. All right. This fucking thing. Let me turn this stupid shit off. All right, yeah, I just totally dropped Wi-Fi when I moved to go grab a smoke real quick. I don't know what that shit's about, but we're back. We should be fine now. That shit's nuts, man. I did think that was funny though. Somebody said that I got taken by the ship. That's funny. The Flying Dutchman. Yeah. Oh, it definitely took balls to navigate those ships back then. Like I said in the beginning of this chapter, when they first went out, the reason that they got separated, if anybody didn't hear, 700 pirates on 6 different ships, they take off and then they hit a calm. And as the currents were just like driving them, some of the ships ended up way up the coast, and some of the ships ended up in different places, man. And wherever Lawlenwa and his ship, they had 300 on that big ship. Wherever they landed, they were like, fuck it, this is where we're at. This is where we're going to go robbing and killing. That was nuts, man. For 3 months, they went up and down the coast, just taking village and pillaging it and setting it on fire. Went up the road. They had those 3 ambushes. Finally made it to the big town after they fought past the big guns and used their rifles to snipe the Spaniards and stuff like that. Yeah, but then they ended up super fucked, man, as they made their way further down that coast and got stuck and then had to go onto land. And those Indians that were there were cannibals. That shit is crazy, man. And the way he went out was not good at all. Was not good at all. They tore him into pieces, and all those guys that were with him tore those people into pieces, throwing them in the fire like that, roasting them and shit. It's crazy. But yeah, we're going to get into the, let me pack a bowl here real quick. I had to get back down here to at least make the show active, let everybody know I wasn't kidnapped. So I'm going to grab a drink too real quick. But this time I'm not going to take my computer with me, or it's going to drop Wi-Fi. Everybody's just going to have to be patient for a minute. But yeah, these are really, really cool stories, man. I really get into this stuff a lot, as everybody can tell. I can't wait to get into the other 3 books. I mean, we've got a way to go, especially just with Captain Morgan. This is going to be like a few different shows with Captain Morgan alone. Like I said, this guy that gives this first-hand account was on all of the missions with Captain Morgan. He gives a detailed account. He starts off with who the guy is and where he came from, and gives us all kinds of great background information that you don't normally get if you just watch these like simple documentaries or read the very generalized pirate books that you can pick up in the Amazon store, or like back in the day from a Books a Million or some shit like that, right? They would give you some good details on these people, no doubt. Some of those books, depending on how you got into it and which books you got. Some of them did go into some detail, but very rarely do you get the kind of detail that is in this book and is in another book too of the 4 that we're going to read. I ain't eating no peoples no time soon. Yeah, no shit, right? Yeah, sort of just like the Titanic, how pitch black it would have been at night. Oh yeah, forget about it. Yeah, but those guys could read. They wrote like they would read the stars. They would read the stars, and they would read the currents too. They could find islands that way. They could watch which way the water was flowing. I mean, I don't know enough about that stuff to even start to describe it. I just know that it's in these books. They talk about watching the tides and the currents and stuff like that, the way that the ocean moves, and they can kind of tell which way land is, which is pretty nuts. But these guys also, yeah, they just read the stars, man. They were really good with compasses and maps. All right, so I'm going to grab a drink real quick. Be patient for about 3 minutes. I'll be back and we'll kick off Captain Morgan. All right, drink secured. Smoke with me if you got it. I'm going to get the bowl lit up. All right. Yeah, KD, they brought lots of fruit to avoid scurvy and stuff and fish. Yeah, the scurvy stuff, that got all fixed up with Captain Cook. That's a fucking incredible journal to read. If anybody is into reading really, really old shit like that, like I am, Captain Cook's journal, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. The first-hand accounts you get of the first contacts with a lot of those people, especially when he first lands in Tahiti, and that shit will blow your fucking mind. If you read that stuff, that journal, it will blow your mind. When he certain people, you will just be like, holy shit. And in some parts of his journey too, when they go really, 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 really far south, looking for what we know as Antarctica, dude, if you've ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, in the beginning of it, it shows them, they're like, for all intents, Antarctica, right? They're sailing through and they're going towards this big cave. But if you watch that part as they're going through, they made the ship exactly as it's described in Captain Cook's journals as they are getting closer and closer to Antarctica. The ropes and the sails are completely frozen in place, right? So the sails are like blown open, but they're frozen. People's fingers and toes were literally just coming off. These people, a lot of them were barefoot. It got so fucking cold, man, that it, like this ship was constantly steaming and everything was frozen completely in place. Gnarly. But yeah, you got to read that shit. Captain Cook's journals. Anybody that likes adventure stuff, or I mean, there might even be an audio book for it. It might even be free. But it's absolutely incredible. You got to check that stuff out. All right, here we go. Chapter 9, The Origin and Descent of Captain Henry Morgan, His Exploits and the Most Remarkable Actions of His Life. All right, written by his friend and fellow brethren of the coast, Alexander Esquemeling. Captain Henry Morgan was born in Great Britain, in the Principality of Wales. His father was a rich yeoman or farmer of good quality, even as most who bear that name in Wales are known to be even today. Morgan, when young, had no inclination whatsoever to the calling of his father, and therefore left his country and came towards the seacoasts to seek some other employment more suitable to his aspiring humor for adventure. He found several ships at anchor when he arrived, bound for Barbados. With these, he resolved to go in the service of one who, according to the practice of those parts, sold him as soon as he came ashore. He served his time at Barbados as a slave, and obtaining his liberty, betook himself to Jamaica, there to seek his own new fortune. Here he found 2 vessels of pirates ready to go to sea, and being destitute of any employment, he went with them with intent to follow the exercises of that sort of people, and joined among the old buccaneers and brethren of the coast. He soon learned their manner of living, so exactly that having performed 3 or 4 voyages with profit and success, he agreed with some of his comrades who had got by the same voyages a little money to join stocks and buy a ship together. The vessel being bought, they unanimously chose him captain and commander. With this ship he set forth from Jamaica to cruise on the coasts of Campeche, in which voyage he took several ships, in which he returned triumphant. Here he found an old pirate named Mansvelt, whom we have already mentioned, busied in equipping a considerable fleet with design to land on the continent and pillage whatsoever he could. Mansvelt, seeing Captain Morgan return with so many prizes, judged him to be a man for his vice admiral in that expedition. Thus, having fitted out 15 ships, great and small, they sailed from Jamaica with 500 pirates. This fleet arrived not long after at the Isle of St. Catherine, near the continent of Costa Rica, and distant 35 leagues from the river Chagres. Here they made their first descent, landing most of their men, who soon forced the garrison that kept the island to surrender at all the forts and castles thereof, which they instantly demolished except for one, wherein they placed 100 pirates of their own party, and all the slaves that they had taken from the Spaniards with the rest of their men. They then marched to another small island, so near St. Catherine's that with a bridge they made in a few days, they passed there, taking with them all of the ordnance that they had taken on the great island. Having ruined with fire and sword both of the islands, leaving necessary orders at the castle, they put back out to sea with their Spanish prisoners. Yet these they set ashore not long after on the firm land near Portobello. Then they cruised on Costa Rica till they came to the river Cola, designing to pillage all the towns in those parts, thence to pass to the village of Nata to do the same. The governor of Panama, on advice of their arrival and of the hostilities they committed, thought it his duty to meet them with a body of men. His coming caused the pirates to retire suddenly, seeing the whole country was alarmed and that their designs were known, and consequently defeated at that time. Hereupon they returned to St. Catherine to visit the 100 men that they had left in garrison there. The governor of these men was a Frenchman named La Soeur Simon, who behaved himself very well in that charge, while Mansvelt was absent, having put the great island in a very good posture of defense, to be cultivated with many fertile plantations, sufficient to revictual the whole fleet, not only for the present, but also for a new voyage. Mansvelt was very much bent to keep the 2 islands in perpetual possession, being a new land for the pirates to rule, being very commodiously situated for the pirates, being so near the Spanish Main and easily defended. Hereupon Mansvelt determined to return to Jamaica to send recruits back to St. Catherine's, that in case of an invasion, the pirates might be provided for a defense. As soon as he arrived, he propounded his intentions to the governor there, who rejected his propositions, fearing to displease his master, the King of England. Besides that, giving him the men he desired and necessaries, he must of necessity diminish the forces of that island. So the governor's like, no way, dude, that's a bad idea. I'm not just going to give you a bunch of guys and like provisions so that you can go and claim 2 islands, right? That the king says he owns, or that the Spanish say that they own, and that the king's going to have to deal with that bullshit, right? He's like, I'm not doing that, dude. You're not going to go take these islands and make a pirate kingdom. Fuck all that shit. And he's like, if I did give you those guys and all those provisions, it would leave us short people here to defend Jamaica. He was like, no way, man. This is a fucking lose-lose situation for me. I can't do it, right? So Mansvelt then could not compass his designs, so he went to Tortuga. But there he could put into execution what was intended. before he could get it done, before he could make a deal to get the people he needed, he died. He fucking died, right? So now you have Captain Morgan in charge of all these guys as his vice admiral, miles away in these two islands that he wanted to make his pirate kingdom, but he dies in Tortuga and never makes it back. All right. La Soeur-Simon, governor of St. Catherine, receiving no news from Mansvelt, his admiral, was impatiently desirous to know the cause of why. Meanwhile, Don John Perez de Guzman, being newly come to the government of Costa Rica, thought it not convenient for the interest of Spain for that island to be put in the hands of pirates, right? He's like, yeah, no, we've got to make sure that pirates don't grab. Okay, so it's the Spanish that keep the islands, right? Gotcha. That made that a little more clear. Hereupon, John Perez de Guzman, this government official from Costa Rica, he says, you guys are not taking these islands, right? So he equips a considerable fleet, which he sent to retake the islands from the pirates. But before he used violence, he wrote a letter to La Soeur-Simon telling him that if he would surrender the island to his Catholic Majesty, he should be very well rewarded, but in case of refusal, severely punished, when he had forced him to do it. La Soeur-Simon, seeing no probability of being able to defend it alone, nor any... What does it say? That's a weird way to put that. Okay. He didn't see that he was going to be able to defend the islands, basically. It's a really long-winded old English way to say this. So we're just going to say the head of the pirates there, not getting any news from Mansvelt, not knowing what the fuck's going on. He doesn't know if he's getting anybody to come and help him, right? He doesn't know if he's going to get Mansvelt to come back, if there's going to be another couple hundred guys to help out. He's like, there's no way I can defend this place right now against this huge Spanish gathering of ships with what I have here on the island, right? So within a few days, he puts forward articles to the Spanish for a surrender. Okay. There arrived from Jamaica an English ship, which the governor there had sent, with a good supply of people, both men and women. The Spaniards from the castle, having espied the ship, put forth English colors and Simon to go on board and conduct the ship into the port they assigned him. This he performed, and they were all made prisoners. A certain Spanish engineer has published in a print an exact relation of the retaking of the isle by the... Okay, so there's like a picture or a plate in the book. Okay. All right, let's see. Let's get through some of this description. In either case, that's messed up. So the pirates surrender, right? All of a sudden, a ship starts coming in. The guy from Jamaica had changed his mind in the meantime and sent the ship full of people and provisions. So the Spanish are like, yo, go out there and tell them that everything's cool, right? Tell them everything's cool and just guide them in. And when they got in, the guy actually did it. The pirate actually did it. He went out there and he guided those fucking people in. And the Spanish were like, cool, now you're all our prisoners and we're going to steal all your shit. I mean, that's the way it goes, right? That sucks for them. Sucks for them, but you're out living the pirate's life for me and shit like that. I guess sometimes your karma is going to catch up to you because that's fucked up. All right, let's see. The kingdom of terra firma, which of itself is sufficiently strong to repel and destroy great fleets, especially the pirates of Jamaica, had several ways notice imparted to the governor that 14 English vessels cruised on the coast belonging to the Catholic Majesty. July 14th, 1665. News came to Panama that the pirates had arrived at Puerto de Naus and had forced the Spanish garrison of the Isle of St. Catherine, whose governor was Don Esteban del Campo, and possessed themselves of those islands, taking prisoners of the inhabitants and destroying all that they met. About the same time, Don John Perez de Guzman received particular information of those robberies from some of the Spaniards who escaped out of the island and whom he ordered to be conveyed to Porto Velho. The pirates came into that island May 2nd by night without being perceived, and the next day after, there were some skirmishes between them and the Spanish. They took the fortresses and made prisoners of all the inhabitants and soldiers that could not escape. Upon this, Don John called a council of war, wherein he declared the great progress the pirates had made in the dominions of his Catholic Majesty, and propounded that it was absolutely necessary to send some forces to the Isle of St. Catherine, sufficient to retake it from the pirates, the honor and interest of his Majesty of Spain being very narrowly concerned. Otherwise, the pirates by such conquests might easily, in course of time, possess themselves of all of the countries around. Okay, so the pirates took that shit back. They took their islands back, right? They're fighting now. Panama gets word that the pirates are going to be headed their way, that they're part of the plan, right? This Guzman guy that won against the pirates once before, he says, listen, man, if they took that shit back and Panama's on the menu too, that means they're just going to work their way down the coast. He goes, if we don't put together some people and go end this shit right now, these pirates, like locusts, are literally just going to move down the coast, village by village, town by town, until they get to Panama. And by the time they get here, they're probably going to be in the absolute, like, close to 1,000. These guys traveled deep. They left with 16 ships. That one in the last chapter, L'Olonois, he left with 6 ships, and that was 700 guys. How many guys do you think they've got with 13 ships, dude? Right? I think, what did it say in the beginning? Like close to 500 or something like that, which means they were spread out. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I have to go back up to the top of the chapter and see. Hang on one second. Let me go up here to the top and see if I can find that. Let's see. I'm not finding it very quick. So we're just going to scroll back down. That's all right. All right. Let's see. Let's get down past all that shit. It's describing like all these boats and how many people are on them. The Spanish are trying to get past some of this stuff. The pirates tell them, just leave us the fuck alone. We're not going to, we'll leave you guys alone. We won't come after Panama for now. And the guy, the Guzman, comes up with a plan to make sure that they can't. He starts going through systematically, this Guzman guy. He puts together a force, and he starts going through town by town by town, removing all of the provisions and moving the people out of these villages, right? So his plan is that if the pirates do move their way down, that they won't have anything to eat. They won't be able to find any food. The farms will be destroyed. There won't be anything to steal, right? And he orders that all of that stuff gets moved to Portobello for the use of the militia in the meantime, so that they can put on a strong defense, right? That's crazy. Here he arrived July 2nd with most things necessary to the expedition in hand, where he found in the port a good ship and well mounted called the St. Vincent, that belonged to the company of the slaves, which he manned and put lots and lots of food and drink on, and sent to the Isle of St. Catherine, constituting Captain Joseph Sanchez Ximenez, Major of Portobello. He carried with him 270 soldiers and 37 prisoners of the same island, besides 34 Spaniards of the garrison of Portobello. So this guy came rolling deep. Yeah, he had 300 soldiers total, plus 37 prisoners on his boats. And it says he had 12 very dexterous Indians that were good at shooting with bows and arrows, plus 7 able and expert gunners, 2 lieutenants, 2 pilots, 1 surgeon, and 1 priest of the Order of St. Francis for their chaplain. Okay, so like I said, that whole thing I was trying to skip over was very, very descriptive. Just like that was, down to the last man. Don John soon gave orders to all the officers how to behave themselves, telling them that the governor of Cartagena would supply them with more men, boats, and all things else necessary for their enterprise to destroy the pirates. To which effect he had already written to the governor. July 24th, Don John setting sail with a fair wind, he called before him all of his people and made them a speech, encouraging them to fight against the enemies of their country and religion, and especially against the inhuman pirates who had committed so many horrid cruelties upon their subjects of his Catholic Majesty, withal promising every one of them the most liberal rewards, especially to such as should behave themselves well in the service of their king and country. Thus Don John did bid them farewell, and the ship set sail under a favorable gale. The 22nd, they arrived at Cartagena and presented a letter to the governor. Oh, get off of there. What are you doing? Yeah, presented a letter to the governor thereof from the noble and valiant Don John, who received it with testimonies of great affection to the person. Okay, blah, 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 blah. The governor of Cartagena promised him more help if they needed it: 1 frigate, 1 galleon, 1 boat, and 126 men. Okay. The pirates, seeing our ships come to an anchor, gave them presently 3 guns with bullets, which were soon answered in the same coin. Hereupon Major Joseph Sanchez sent ashore to the pirates one of the officers to require with them, in the name of the Catholic king, his master, to surrender the island. So the Spanish sent one guy onto the island to demand that they surrender, and to remind them that they have done this in the midst of peace between 2 crowns of Spain and England, and that if they wouldn't surrender, that they were all going to be put to the sword. The pirates made answer that the island had once before belonged unto the government and dominions of the King of England, and that instead of surrendering it, they preferred to lose their lives fighting against the devils of the Spanish. On Friday the 13th, 3 slaves from the enemy came swimming aboard the Admiral. These brought intelligence that all the pirates upon the island were only 72 in number, and that they were under a great consternation, seeing such considerable forces come against them. With this intelligence, the Spaniards resolved to land immediately and advance towards the fortresses, which ceased not to fire as many great guns against them as they possibly could, which were answered in the same manner, until dark that night. On Sunday, the 15th of the day, with the Assumption of Our Lady, the weather being very calm and clear, the Spaniards began to advance thus. The ship St. Vincent, riding admiral, discharged 2 whole broadsides on the battery called the Conception, the ship St. Peter. Damn, so that was one of the pirate ships. Okay, so it says one of the Spanish ships rode up on one of the pirate ships and discharged 2 whole broadsides of cannon onto the pirate ship. It says St. Peter discharged likewise her guns against the other battery named St. James. Meanwhile, our people landed in small boats, directing their course towards the point of the battery last mentioned, and thence they marched towards the gate called Cortadura. The pirates ran. Trying to skip through some of this stuff that's not necessary. All right. Yeah, so the pirates ran into a fort, and then they had to surrender. All right. Let's skip past this shit too. They're just describing the batteries and the weapons of some of these guys. All right, let's see. All right, there was 40 pirates left hiding out in a different fort. Okay. The Spanish came into the fortress, made 3 attacks on 3 different sides, and at once at the same time. Okay, so they hit 3 different sides at the same time. The pirates, seeing many of their men already killed, and that they could in no manner subsist any longer, retreated towards Cortadura, where they surrendered themselves and the whole island to the Spanish. The Spanish possessed everything, and they set up Spanish colors as soon as they had rendered thanks to God for the victory. The number of dead were 6. Okay, so all right, so 6 of the Spanish died. They had 50 prisoners, and the rest. So there were 72 pirates on the island. They got like 22 people died on the pirate side. On the island, the pirates had 800 pounds of powder, 250 pounds of small bullets, and many other military provisions that the Spanish took hold of after they took the rest hostage. Among the prisoners were also taken 2 Spaniards, which had bore arms under the English against the Catholic Majesty. Those were shot. Okay, so the Spanish found a couple of traitors, shot them. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. All right, we're going to go. All right, here we are. We're back to finding Captain Morgan finally. I've been skipping through some of these weird descriptions. Let me scroll up here. I haven't been looking at the chat. Tommy says, I'm going to lay back. Everyone have a great night. Thanks for reading. This is interesting. Oh, for sure, man. Thanks for coming by. I know this isn't for everybody. I know it's late on a Sunday night. Like I've said a couple of times, I've been wanting to do this, these pirate histories, you know what I mean? So I've been just doing them whenever I can. And even if it's like, I honestly didn't even think like 1 or 2 people would show up in here live, if I'm being honest. I just figured I'd go on and read this stuff so it would be recorded. Anybody that's into it could listen to it, you know, throughout the week or another day. So yeah, I appreciate it. And, you know, people are into this stuff. I appreciate the conversation. I always love this stuff. Yeah. I love all these stories, man. Let me hit my bowl real quick. Katie says, I wish I had 1 pound of powder right now, or maybe 2.2 pounds. Yeah. These guys had 800 pounds of fucking gunpowder. Yeah, they took all that shit. All right. Captain Morgan, seeing his predecessor and Admiral Mansvelt were dead, used all the means that were possible to keep in possession the Isle of St. Catherine, seated near Cuba. His chief intent was to make it a refuge and sanctuary to the pirates, just like Mansvelt planned, putting it on condition of being a convenient receptacle of their praise and their robberies. To this effect, he left no stone unmoved, writing to several merchants in Virginia and New England, persuading them to send him provisions and necessaries towards putting the said island in such a posture of defense as to fear no danger of invasion from any side whatsoever. But all this proved ineffectual by the Spaniards retaking the said island, yet Captain Morgan retained his courage, which put him on new designs. First, he equipped a ship in order to gather a fleet as great and as strong as he possibly could. By degrees, he effected it and gave orders to every member of his fleet to meet at a certain port of Cuba, there determining to call a council and deliberate what was best to be done and what place first to fall upon. Okay, so he calls a giant council of the pirates at a small island off the coast of Cuba and gives everybody a vote on where they want to go rob and steal. That's a better way to just put that simply, right? Leaving these preparations for a moment in this condition, I shall give my readers some small account of the said Isle of Cuba and whose port this all right, I'm good on that. We don't need to know like the actual coordinates for Cuba and like the trades and shit like that. We're good on that. Let's get back down to the all right, let's skip here. All right, Captain Morgan had been but 2 months in these ports of the south of Cuba when he had got together a fleet of 12 sail. Okay, between ships and great boats with 700 fighting men. All right, here we go. So Captain Morgan went to that small island off the coast of Cuba, put out the word for as many pirates as he possibly could to come there and meet, have a council, and decide where they wanted to go rob. In 2 months, he had a fleet of 12 ships between ships and great boats, and with 700 fighting pirates. So he had 700 fighting men, part English and part French. They called a council, and some advised to assault the city of Havana in the night, which they said might easily be done if they could but take any of the priests. It says that they could sack the city before the castles even got armed and could put themselves in a posture of defense. Others propounded according to their several opinions and other attempts, but the former proposal was rejected because many of the pirates who had been prisoners at other times in Havana affirmed nothing of consequence could be done with less than 1,000. Oh, okay. So they said that they would need at least 1,500 men. Again, sometimes these fucking old English phrases, I stop and try and figure out a better way to put it. Yeah, so dude wants to. A lot of the pirates are like, hey, let's go rob Havana, right? We're already on the south of Cuba. Let's just go to Havana and rob that. A bunch of the pirates say, no fucking way, man. We've been locked up in Havana before. We did a bunch of time there, and you're not taking that town with less than 1,500 dudes, right? Moreover, that with all these people, they ought first go to the island de los Pinos and land them in small boats about a place called Matamona, 14 leagues from the said city, whereby to accomplish their designs. Finally, they saw no possibility. Okay, so they were saying that you'd have to fucking land way too far away and march too far with nothing in between just to get to that place in the first, and you don't even have enough people. Okay. Finally, they saw no possibility of gathering so great a fleet, and hereupon, with what they had, they concluded to attempt some other place. Among the rest, one propounded they should assault the town of El Puerto del Principe. This proposition he persuaded to by saying he knew that place very well, and that being at a distance from sea, it never was before sacked by any pirates, whereby the inhabitants were still very rich, exercising their trade by ready money with those of Havana who kept here an established commerce. This proposal was presently admitted by Captain Morgan and the chief of his companions. Hereupon they ordered every captain to weigh anchor and set sail, steering towards that coast nearest to El Principe, or Puerto del Principe, I'm sorry. Here is a bay named by the Spaniards El Puerto de Santa Maria. Being arrived at this bay, a Spaniard who was prisoner aboard the fleet swam ashore by night to the town of El Puerto del Principe, giving an account to the inhabitants of the designs of the pirates. Okay, so that's fucked up. So they all decide that they have this council. They talk about where they want to go rob. They settle on this place, Puerto del Principe. They say it's never been sacked by pirates before. There's still plenty of gold there. They actually deal in like cash, right? With Havana and other cities, they have a big trade, so there's lots of money there. They're like, cool, let's go hit that place. They sail there. They get set up. One of the Spanish prisoners they had made it off the boat, swam in the fucking ocean to the shore, and warned the people in Puerto del Principe of what the pirates were about to do. Okay, so giving an account to the inhabitants of the design of the pirates, which he overheard in their discourse while they thought he did not understand English. The Spaniards, upon this advice, began to hide all of their riches and carry away their movables. The governor immediately raised all the people of the town, freemen and slaves, and with part of them took a post by which of necessity the pirates must pass, and commanded many trees to be cut down and laid across the ways to hinder their passage, placing several ambushes, strengthened with some pieces of cannon, to play upon them on their march. He gathered in all about 800 men, of which detaching part into the said ambushes, with the rest to guard around the town, drawing them up in a spacious field whence they could see the coming of the pirates at length. So the Spanish prisoner gets off the boat, swims to the shore, tells the people what's about to happen. There's pirates out here. There's like 700 of these fucking pirates. They're about to come through here, man, like locusts. You don't even understand. You guys are fucked. The governor of the town says, fuck that shit. I've got 800 guys. I'm going to set up a bunch of ambushes on the one road they're going to have to take up here. All kinds of trees and shit cut down in their way on the one road to get up here. I'm going to put another 400 guys in and around the town. Everything is going to be fine. He's like, we're going to kick these pirates' ass, right? On top of that, the only area that they have to come up on this main gate of the town, there's like a big open field between the gate and I guess the edge of the woods, the jungle, whatever the fuck that they have to come out of from the shore. There's a big field in between there and the gate. So they're going to see the pirates coming across this open field for a great length, it says. Captain Morgan with his men, now on the march, found the avenues to the town unpassable. Like we were just talking about, right? So Captain Morgan and his men, they get there, they get up the road, they're like, fuck, man. The road to this town's unpassable. Hereupon they took their way through the woods, traversing it with great difficulty, whereby they escaped diverse ambushes. At last they came to the open plain. Okay, so they got around the ambushes by going through the woods at great difficulty, but they got around the ambushes. They finally made it to the open field without having to fuck with any of that. That's crazy. All right, so from its figure, all right, so they came to the plain from its figure called by the Spaniards La Savannah, or the sheet. The governor, seeing them come, detached a troop of horse to charge them in the front, thinking to disperse them and to pursue them with his main body. But this design succeeded not, for the pirates had old buccaneer riflemen, marched in very good form and order at the sound of their drums, and with flying colors coming near the horse, they drew into a semicircle and each fired one single shot, and so advanced towards the Spaniards, who charged them valiantly for a while, but the pirates being very dexterous at their arms and rifles and swords and blades, the governor with many of their companions were killed. The rest retreated towards the wood to save themselves with more advantage, but before they could reach it, most of them were unfortunately then killed by the pirates. Thus they left the victory to these new-come enemies, who had no considerable loss of men in the battle, and but very few wounded. So the pirates didn't, not a pirate got killed. Very few of them got wounded, and they literally just fucking wasted these Spanish guys, man. They killed their horses. They all literally just broke into semicircles and just shot the horses with one single shot each, you know, so the horses probably took a few shots, but they just laid them down. These are fucking, those old buccaneers were hunters, man. You know, we learned that in the beginning of this book. It tells us exactly who these people were and where they came from and how they became buccaneers, how they got their name. That's all in the first episode. But yeah, these guys didn't miss when they fired their rifles. And they were also dexterous with their blades. They just ran through these fuckers, man. Nobody died. It's pretty wild. All right, let's get back to the story here. All right. Thus they left the victory to these new-come enemies who had no considerable loss in the battle. The skirmish lasted about 4 hours. They entered the town not without great resistance of such as those were still within, who defended themselves as long as possible, and many, seeing the enemy in the town, shut themselves up inside their own houses, and thus made several shots upon the pirates, who thereupon threatened them, saying, if you surrender not voluntarily, you shall soon see the town in a flame, and your wives and children torn to pieces before your eyes. Upon these menaces, the Spaniards submitted to the discretion of the pirates, believing they could not continue there for long. So these guys made it into the town. Everybody locked themselves in their houses, basically out of fear, of course. And the pirates say, if you don't surrender and give us all your shit, we're going to set your fucking town on fire and kill all your women and children. That shit's super brutal and crazy. That's terrible, man. That's gnarly. As soon as the pirates had possessed themselves of the town, they enclosed all of the Spaniards, men, women, children, and slaves into several churches and pillaged all the goods from the homes that they could find. Then they searched the country around the town, bringing in daily many goods and prisoners who had run, with much provision, with which they fell to making great cheer after their old custom, without remembering the poor prisoners whom they let starve in the churches while they ate all their food and drink. Though they tormented them daily and inhumanely to make them confess where they had hid their goods and money, though little or nothing was left, not sparing the women and little children, giving them nothing to eat, whereby the greatest part perished. That's fucking terrible. The pirates just took all of the food and all of the drink and didn't give any of it to the prisoners at all and just let them all die in these churches of starvation. That's horrible, man. Pillage and provisions growing scarce, they thought convenient to depart and seek new fortunes in other places. They told the prisoners that they should find money to ransom themselves, else they should all be transported to Jamaica as slaves. And besides, if they did not pay a second ransom for the town, they would turn every house into ashes. The Spaniards hereupon nominated among themselves 4 fellow prisoners to go and seek for the above-mentioned contributions. But the pirates, to the intent that they should return speedily with those ransoms, tormented several cruelly as their presents before they departed. After a few days, the Spaniards returned, telling Captain Morgan, "We have run up and down and searched all of the neighboring woods and places we most suspected, and yet we have not been able to find any of our own party, nor consequently any fruit of our embassy. If you are pleased to have a little longer patience with us, we could probably find something." Yeah, that's so okay. These guys went out into the woods. They came back, said, "Look, man, we didn't find anybody. We didn't find any money. Give us a couple of weeks and we'll see what we can come up with," right? Captain Morgan says, "Fine, go look and come back." But not long after, there came into the town 7 or 8 pirates who had been ranging in the woods and fields and got considerable loot. These brought amongst other prisoners a slave whom they had taken with letters. Captain Morgan, having perused them, found that they were from the governor of Santiago, being written to some of the prisoners, wherein he told them they should not make too much haste to pay any ransom for their town or their persons or any other pretext, but on the contrary, they should put off the pirates as long as they could, with excuses and delays, expecting to be relieved by him in a short time when he could certainly come to their aid. Okay, so a bunch of pirates that were roaming through the woods looking for people and stolen, or people and their property that they were hiding from being stolen, right? They didn't want stolen. A bunch of pirates that were roaming in the woods brought in a bunch of prisoners and found a bunch of this booty that they tried to hide. Amongst them, somebody had a letter on them that came from a local governor that said, "Hey, don't make a deal with the pirates. Don't fucking deal with these guys. Don't promise anything. Give them excuses. Put them off for as long as you can because I'm coming and I've got reinforcements," right? Now, Captain Morgan knows that. He's obviously intercepted this letter and he's reading that reinforcements are on their way. So upon this intelligence, Captain Morgan immediately ordered all of their plunder to be ships, and he told the Spaniards that the very next day they should pay their ransoms, for he would not wait a moment longer. He was leaving, but he would indeed reduce the entire town to ashes if they failed to come up with the money that he demanded. With this intimation, Captain Morgan made no mention to the Spaniards of the letters that they had intercepted. They answered that it was impossible for them to give such a sum in money in such a short a time. So he didn't tell them that he knew. He just told them, "I'm leaving tomorrow. Get me the fucking money. I don't want to hear any excuses. I'm going to burn your town to the fucking ground," right? The Spanish, not knowing that he knows that they're trying to put him off, they say, "Look, it's impossible for us to get you that amount of money in such a short time." Especially since they hadn't been able to find the rest of the people that ran off into the woods. Captain Morgan knew full well their intentions, but thought it not convenient to stay there any longer, demanding of them only 500 oxen or cows with sufficient salt to powder them, with this condition that they should carry them on board his ships. Thus he departed with all of his men, taking with him only 6 of the principal prisoners as pledges. Next day, the Spaniards brought the cattle and salt to the ships and required the prisoners, but Captain Morgan refused to deliver them till they had helped his men to kill and salt the beef. This was performed in great haste, he not caring to stay there any longer, lest he should be surprised by the forces that were gathering against him. And having received all on board his vessels, he set at liberty the hostages. So he told these people, "Get your shit, get all the money you can, or I'm setting your town on fire." They put him off. He knows what they're up to. He says, "Fine, go and get me 500 fucking cattle, bring them back here, butcher them, salt it all, right? Put it on my boats, and we'll get the fuck out of here." Okay, so they do that. Okay, a Frenchman being employed in killing and salting the beeves, an English pirate took away the marrow bones he had taken out of the ox, which these people esteemed much. Hereupon they challenged one another, being come to the place of a duel. The Englishman stabbed the Frenchman in the back, whereby he fell down dead. The other Frenchman, desirous of revenge, made an insurrection against the English, but Captain Morgan soon appeased them by putting the criminal in chains to be carried to Jamaica, promising that he would see justice done upon him. All right, so the French and the English, remember, there's 700 pirates. They're divided basically all French and English. So the French and the English were about to go to war against each other in this place because two of their people dueled over fucking marrow bones. People are insane. All things being ready and on board, the prisoners set at liberty. They sailed thence to a certain island where Captain Morgan intended to make a dividend of what they had purchased. And okay, so now they're going to go and sail to a place where they can split up the treasure. That's what this fucking long-winded ass old English shit is saying. Where being arrived, they found near the value of 50,000 pieces of eight in ready money and goods. The sum being known, it caused a general grief to see such a small purchase with so many men, not sufficient to pay their debts at Jamaica. Hereupon Captain Morgan proposed that they should think on some other enterprise and pillage before they returned. But the French, not being able to agree with the English, left Captain Morgan with all of his own nation, notwithstanding all the persuasions he used to reduce them to continue in his company. So the French were like, fuck it, dude, we're out. Right? And Captain Morgan tried to get them to stay, but they weren't having any part of it. And they parted with all external signs of friendship. They were like, it's cool, man. We're good, but we don't want to keep going places with you right now. Captain Morgan, reiterating his promises to them that he would see justice done on that criminal, this he performed. For being arrived at Jamaica, he caused him to be hanged, which was all the satisfaction the French pirates could expect. All right. Well, we're going to probably follow this up on another day. We'll get a little further into Captain Morgan. Captain Morgan has a lot of chapters in this book. And the very next one is titled Captain Morgan Resolving to Attack and Plunder the City of Portobello. He equips a fleet and with little expense and small forces takes it. So in the next chapter, we're going to see him go on another giant land pirate raid, right? It's not going to be boat to boat. They're not going to be stealing a Spanish ship. They're going to be going on land and taking another entire city called Portobello. And that's another gnarly one. That's a crazy pirate raid. That'll be fun to learn about and read. Well, for me, read again. For anybody that doesn't know these, for you to learn. It is a gnarly pirate raid. It's a very, very cool story. All of them are. There's several more raids to go with Captain Morgan. He's got a long history. There's a reason why he's one of the best known pirates. You know, there's a reason why he's so well known, why he's infamous. And the further we get into these, like that's just the beginning, right? He literally just got put in charge of this huge fleet. When they left, remember, he came down there, he became a pirate. You know, he was a young guy when he left England. He didn't want to be a farmer like his dad. He wanted to seek adventure. So he went down to the ports. 6 boats were leaving for Barbados. He was like, cool, sounds like that's where I'm going. And he was young. And he gets on the boat. When they get to Barbados, the captain fucking sells him into slavery, indentured servitude, right? He sells him. Dude does his time. He gets set free. And just like our author here, Alexander Esquemeling, that's giving us this firsthand account of Captain Morgan and his sailings with him and his dealings with him, his friendship with him. The same exact way, both these guys were slaves. They were let go and they were set free. Both of them went right down to the port and joined up with the Brethren of the Coast. You know, our author, this happened to him in Tortuga, right? Eventually with Captain Morgan, he went from Barbados to Jamaica and joined up with the pirates there. Went on 3 or 4 raids with them, did really well, made a bunch of friends, made some money. They threw in lots together and bought a ship. They went out. They had great success as pirates, man, in their ship. First time out, they went out. They did really, really well. They came back. When they came to Tortuga, they sold a bunch of stuff. Word about them started to get around. They went back to Jamaica. This old salty pirate named Mansvelt was putting together a huge number of boats. I think it said 12 or 13. 700 men, and he hears about Captain Morgan and how well they're doing. And he says, you know what, man, you're a man of courage. You're obviously a smart guy. Why don't you be my vice admiral and help me lead these 700 men? And we're going to go take shit and get it done. Captain Morgan's like, of course. Right? That sounds amazing. That sounds fucking amazing. And they run off to go do their business. But first, before they actually do one of their big raids, they stop at this small island, and Mansveld says, you know what, man, this island and that little island right there, this would be great if we could set these into a pirate kingdom. If we could literally just claim these two islands. He was like, man, it's right next to the Spanish Main. It's right next to all this trade. There's all these huge boats sailing around here, all these cities we could rob. It's easy for us to defend. He's like, bro, we should set up shop here and make this another pirate kingdom. And everybody's for it. Obviously, we read that whole long-winded story about their battle for St. Catherine with the Spanish, right? And that de Guzman guy, that Don John de Guzman guy. They went back and forth, winning and losing, right? Finally, Captain Morgan's like, all right, man, fuck that place, right? It was a cool idea, but we're not going to all keep dying for this dumb shit. So let's just go get our shit together and we'll go rob and steal some other places, right? And they do that. He's doing all right. He's got now his own large gathering of men, right? They got together, decided where they were going to go, decided what they were going to rob. Everybody had a vote. They went and did it, but they didn't get as much money as they thought they were going to get, right? And it was a whole lot of pain in the ass to get it. It ends up being a huge pain in the ass to get it. And the French were like, you know what, man, we've been fighting. The French guys and the English guys on this crew are just not getting along, man. We literally just had a duel. And your guy stabbed the fucking guy in the back, dude. Like, it wasn't, that shit's fucked up, right? That's what the French were saying to him. Like, that shit's fucked up. We're not getting along. We didn't get nearly enough money for all that garbage we just went through. So we're out. We're going to split. And that's exactly what they did, So Captain Morgan tried to get them to stay. They weren't hearing it. They took off. So now Captain Morgan's putting together a new plan with the people that he's got. And we'll get into that in chapter 11 when we come back for another episode, which will be episode 3. And we'll continue on with Captain Morgan for a while. But I appreciate everybody that came through, man. It's late on a Sunday night. Like I said, I didn't think anybody would come through. I was just going to read this stuff, so I had it recorded and put up on the channel because I've been meaning to do this for so long. But yeah, anybody, if you hear this later, click like, leave a comment, maybe talk about some of the insane shit that was in these chapters with, the way the first pirate died, right? He got hacked into pieces while he was alive, thrown into the fire. That was pretty nuts. L'Olonois. And then already the sheer numbers of pirates we're talking about now. Remember in the first chapter, we started off with like the first known act of like piracy by what we knew as the Buccaneers at that time. There was 28 of those guys in the ship. Within a year, there was 20 ships in the Bay of Tortuga, pirate ships full of pirates, right? 20 of them within a year from then. Now, we're fast forwarding a couple more years, and we're literally talking about they just put out word that they're going pirating and like 700 people show up. It's amazing the number of people that we're talking about, and those 700 people are not to be fucked with. When they talk about they pull forward the old Buccaneers with their rifles, those dudes are sniping people out. Like they're talking about like one shot, one kill type of stuff. Like these dudes weren't missing. These guys were battle experienced. They marched in formation to drums. When they were talking about them coming across the field, that they all had banners. And we're going to read about that again when we get to them, when they go to Maracaibo and especially Panama. When we get to Panama, that's one of the most epic pirate tales in the world. like in all of human history. When Captain Morgan and these pirates go and they take Panama and they march across that field to drums, and each section of pirates has their own banner, it's absolutely madness, man. Absolutely madness. But some of that happened in this one, right? They all broke into semicircles when they sent horses in to try and run them down, and people on the horses to try and cut them down, and told us about their tactic, how they would just split into these like semicircles and just put the horse down, kill the dude, real easy, real fast, real clean. And then they just stormed that place, man, and just killed everybody. All the people that were wanting to fight anyway, the fighting men, right? And all the rest of the people in the town locked their doors and were like, holy shit. No, you can't come in. Yeah. But leave comments about like any part of that story that like you found amazing or you found interesting, or even about these guys did some horrible things, man. These guys did some horrible things. All those people starved to death in that church, for example. That's horrific. All they had to do was feed their prisoners. Instead, they just ate everything and drank everything, gave them nothing. All right, Jason, we'll see you soon. Thanks for hanging out, man. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you, my friend. We're closing it down anyway. I'm just kind of doing like a quick recap and saying goodbye to everybody. Like I said, leave a like, leave a comment. I find these stories amazing. That's why I say, like, any detail that you found interesting, let me know. We can talk about it. But either way, I'll try and do another one of these soon. I might do an episode on Alexander before I do another pirate episode. I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm still putting a couple of things together for that. Exactly where I want to start and the info I want to have handy. I might want to show some pictures and maps and stuff like that too when I do the Alexander one. So I'm putting some stuff together. We'll see. I might just do another pirate one next weekend, and we will all find out when I figure it out, right? But everybody have a great night. I appreciate you coming through. Until the next one.